Salute BookTube. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. If you're a repeat customer or repeat viewer, thank you so much for being here, whether you're new or if you've been here before. Here's the tag video. I have a tag video on a Tuesday, late Tuesday for me. I wanted to do this earlier, but a bunch of things happened, and I only have time now at the very end of the day to do this. But I wanted to do it on a Tuesday, get it out there on a Tuesday, uh, and hopefully you will enjoy it. The tag is called the Get to Know My Tastes tag. And again, I was tagged by Angelina at Books Do Things to Me. I think this is my third tag, and this is the third time Angelina has tagged me. So I thank her very much for tagging me. It's always fun to be tagged. I always get nervous with tag video to get tagged because I don't know. I feel like tags are made more for fiction books, and I'm mostly a non-fiction reader. But this one is pretty neutral. So it's if you're a fiction reader or a non-fiction reader, it's a fun tag to do. So again, it's called Get to Know My Taste tag. I'll link Angelina's channel in the description below. But let's just get into the questions. I didn't do too much preparation. I did a bit of preparations for some of the questions, but some of them not. So hopefully this will go good without a glitch. Question number one: how do you rate books? Give a quick rundown of how you do your star ratings, or if you don't use star ratings, how do you evaluate books? I don't use a star rating. Angelina has a very interesting star rating system. She's taken from a Slovenian TV critic who does ratings for TV shows, and then applies that for books. Most people, the star system, one star, 2 stars, up to 5 stars. I don't do stars. At the end of the month, I usually do a review of the books I read, and I talk about the books. But I don't use a rating system. For me, it's very black or white. It's either a good book and worth reading, or not a good book and not worth reading. But I never came in here to be some kind of critic or professional reviewer or anything like that. So I don't know. Or maybe it's just that I'm lazy. I'm too lazy to go and sit down and make notes and then talk about a book. But I should. Maybe I feel like I should. I've noticed in some of my previous videos, just looking back at my previous videos, just a list of videos, and just remembering. Sometimes I talk about a book too quickly, don't give it enough time. So I need to fix how I evaluate a book, because just people are starting to ask me for recommendations. I'm actually becoming an influencer. It's incredible. But again, very casual evaluation, which I think is the next question. How do you approach reviewing books? What's your review style? Analytical, emotional, casual, or structured? Not structured. It should be structured, but it's never structured here because again, I'm a lazy booktuber. If I have a notebook with me while I'm reading and actually made notes and then tried to make a video like a script, yeah, I think it would actually be interesting. But I don't do that. So I wish I was structured, but I'm not. I wish I was analytical, but again, analytical. Even when I'm reading, I tend not to note as much as I could. There's a lot of passages, and I should highlight or put a post-it and mark it, or use ebooks more. Maybe that'll be easier to use. But I'm not. I don't see myself as analytical. From the list, I would say casual. I'm quite casual, but maybe I should be less casual, is what I'm trying to say. Question number three: what's the book that made you a reader? Whether it was your first favorite or one that got you hooked. What book started it all? I don't think there's one book that started it all, that I read this book and then I never stopped reading after that. I don't believe I have that. I had that kind of moment. The other thing for usual or my usual viewers who know me and know my channel, I've mentioned this almost on every video, or when it's because I made a tag before called I think it was called the childhood tag. Something about your childhood reading and what got you started into reading. And in that tag video, I had mentioned that I was a reader at a young age. So when I got into school and got introduced, when I started learning how to read and getting introduced to books, I was a reader. And I was a reader through elementary or primary school, really until I got into junior high or high school. That's when I stopped. I had a cut. So all of high school, I didn't read. I stopped reading. And then I got back into reading in my university days. The passion came back, and I've been reading ever since. So there were books when I was younger that gave me the structure gave me the structure and the love of reading, but then it was put on ice. But during high school, I found out that I also loved history and that I'm good at history. I can remember I could remember dates. I just loved it. I loved reading it. I'm surprised I never got into teaching history or becoming a history professor because I think that would have been my ideal profession, but I never got into academia. Uh, but that's what happened at university. My love of reading child fiction or young adult, whatever you want to call it, and then my love of history. Once I got into reading, I became a very voracious history reader, mostly nonfiction, mostly history reader. But going back to the prompt or the question, it says, what got you hooked or started it all? If you see my childhood books tag, I had a lot of the classic childhood stuff, Roald Dahl, the Chronicles of Narnia, the Redwall series. What else did I mention? Yeah, these kind of books that it gave me the basis. And then, although in high school I stopped, it always stayed there at the back of my head. And then when I got into history reading, it just meshed well, and I've been a reader since. So there's not one specific book. Question number 4: do you have a genre niche? Are there certain genres you gravitate towards, or do you read widely across genres? Genre niche is we can dumb it down again. I'm a big nonfiction. I'm a big history reader. I've I've always read fiction, but it's always been a preference for nonfiction. Although since I've been watching BookTube and since I got into BookTube, I've been getting into fiction a lot because all the booktubers or not all, but a lot of the booktubers that I watch are always plugging fiction books. So my knowledge of it is growing, and I'm trying to keep an open mind, and I'm trying to be a more diversified reader. So my fiction reading is increasing. But if there was a genre niche, it would be history. It would be, you want to narrow it down more, it would be Middle Eastern history. You want to narrow it down even more, it would be Gulf and Iraq. You want to narrow it down more, it would be late 19th century, early 20th century, up to mid the 30s and 40s. Let's say 1850 to 1950. You want to drill it down even more, it's British imperialism and the Middle East. I can narrow it down. You'll see I've got 3 shelves behind me of 3 different Middle Eastern history periods. One is Middle Eastern, but these are mostly the period I mentioned, mostly 20th century Middle East. A lot of stuff about Iraq, about Egypt, about Lebanon, Syria, that kind of thing. Those books behind me, which are behind my back, behind the chair, are the Gulf region where I live, in the United Arab Emirates. And then those there are, we can say, ancient and Middle Eastern, ancient and medieval or Middle Ages Middle Eastern. So Babylonia, Sumeria, ancient Egypt, and then things like the Ottoman Empire or the rise of Islam, for example. So Middle East, but then I can become very specific. But that's a genre if you really wanted to nail down my genre reading. I don't really read widely across. I do have British history, American history. I have fiction, as I mentioned. I've been reading a lot of celebrity biographies, but my niche is Middle Eastern. History. Question number 5. Do you generally prefer character-driven or plot-driven stories? Ideally, both. I think a good book would have a good plot and good characters. That's what makes a great book. But if I had to choose, I think I would go plot more. I'm not a very analytical reader, especially in fiction where I try to analyze a character. I like plot more. And I think that's why I like history, because history always has a plot. There's always a target or some kind of end. Um, yeah, so I would prefer both, but I'd prefer a good plot. I think is important. Um, Number 6, what's a book you love so much that you don't care if others don't like it? What's one book you love enough for everyone? Um, okay, and then it says, what's a book you love so much if someone doesn't like it, you know your reading tastes don't align. The book or books where a difference of opinion is a strong indicator of different reading preferences. Because Angelina, I don't, she combined these two, I believe. So I'm just gonna, what's a book that you love so much that you don't care if nobody likes it? Well, one of them is, well, I want to see because, well, this is where I tried to plan it, and okay, I don't want to, but I just want to see because there was another question about what's a strong opinion of a book released within the last year. Um, well, anyway, let's do what's a book you love so much that if someone doesn't like it, or you don't care if others don't like it. I would have to say that's a book. I would take this book, for example. This is a book by an Arab American academic called Adid Dawisha, and it's simply called Iraq: A Political History from Independence to Occupation. So the independence, Iraq got independence in the 1920s, and then in the early 20th century, in the early 21st century, there was the American occupation of Iraq and the regime change that happened. So this book came out around that time. I think this book came out in 2009. So yeah, this is pretty much at the height of the American involvement in Iraq, or just before the withdrawal under Barack Obama, President Obama. But then again, the question is, you don't care if anybody likes it. People should like it, and I think I'll get into that in a separate question. But I found this book very fascinating, very well written. One of the few books that actually went and looked at the history of Iraq during the American occupation and tried to look at the recent history of Iraq in the 20th century, before Saddam, before, parts of Iraq that none of the policymakers, none of the military people that were involved in Iraq and the occupation of Iraq had any idea about. One of the few books that came out that dealt with it. So there's figures. I mean, can anybody name who that person is? I don't think anybody here can. If you do know who that person is, they're at the bottom with the tie and the suit, or who this person is. The history of Iraq, this person. If anybody can answer that in the comments below, I'll do a dance in my next video. But the point I'm trying to make is, books like this I think were important, considering the American involvement in Iraq in 1990 during Operation Desert Storm, the invasion of Kuwait. The Desert Fox and the whole 90s, America was involved in Iraq. In 2003, America actually invaded Iraq and had boots on the ground in Baghdad and in every major Iraqi city. You would have thought that there is some kind of institute of Iraqi studies in America or in the UK or Europe. And to my knowledge, no such thing exists, when it should. I understand that there are institutes and books about the Middle East, but one of my big pet peeves is there are big institutes and programs in American and Western universities about the Middle East, but I don't think that's a correct way. The Middle East is so diverse, and to just do a one-size-fits-all I don't think is very beneficial. I think you really need to specialize. You want to be an Iraq expert. Um, Iraq on its own is complex enough for you to really just focus on that. Of course, there's the larger Middle Eastern context you have to take into consideration, but Iraq is very different to Egypt, which is very different to Algeria, which is very different to Yemen. And then that's just the Middle East. You want to go into the Islamic world, it gets even more broad. So, um, yeah, basically, I'm I'm having trouble answering this question because I think it's gonna come up again with the following questions, and I think I'll pick up on this theme a bit more as the questions come together. I should have planned this a bit better, but there are a few questions in between though that I just want to get out. What's in your trash pocket? What books, tropes, or themes that you know are bad but you love them anyway? Uh, that you know are bad but you love them anyway. I don't know about love, but what was the trash pocket? Recently, I've been collecting. I haven't collected. I just picked them up because I find them on discount shelves, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's really cheap. I'll just take it, and it might be interesting. But after reading them, I'm finding that they're not very interesting, and those are celebrity biographies. So I've been reading. I read Paul McCartney last month. I've been reading a lot of Windsor monarch, Windsor royal family member biographies. I'm reading an Arnold Schwarzenegger biography, autobiography right now. I'm reading the Keith Richards, guitarist for the Rolling Stones biography. I read a biography of Guns N' Roses this year. And I'm trying to get rid of these celebrity biographies because I don't want them in my shelves. I don't really need them, and I'm finding out that this says, "What's in your trash pocket that you know are bad, but you love them." I don't love them, but they are bad for sure, and I've learned that the hard way that they're not that great. But I have them. I don't want to just get rid of them. I want to read them and get rid of them, and make some space in my library. So that's what I would answer for trash pocket. I would put celebrity biographies. Do you have any deal breakers in books? Something that, if present, immediately turns you off from a book? Not specifically. Not specifically. I try to keep an open mind, even if it's in the beginning, and it's not that. The beginning of the book isn't well written, or maybe even you see an error, or I see an error, or I try to give the author a chance. I don't like DNFing a book. I like to finish it to the end. If I start it, I like to finish it, even if I'm not enjoying the book. So there isn't something that will just really repel me to just close the book and throw it away. No. Where are we? Where are we? Question number 10. What's a strong opinion you have about a book released within the last year, whether it's overrated, underrated, or just a take you need to share? This is what I wanted to talk about Iraq and the lack of knowledge about Iraq and the take that you have. There's a couple of books that were released this year or in the last year. I think mostly 2025. Let me just make sure. I should have checked this before. This one is from 2024. I'm going to do it last 2 years because I just wanted to make a point. This one is by Bartle Bull, and it's called Land Between the Rivers, a 5,000-year history of Iraq. That's the first one. The second one is, I think, from 2025. These I bought new because these are exceptions. I usually buy used books, but for these, in this subject, I'll buy them new. Yeah, this is from 2025. It's by... where's the author's name? Moody Rashid. It's Between Two Rivers. And it's also Ancient Mesopotamia and the Birth of History. Again, about Iraq. And then this one, I believe, is from 2024 or maybe 2023. So it's not... Let's make it the last 2 years. This is by Leon Macaron. He's a British travel writer. It's called Wounded Tigress. A river journey through the cradle of civilization. Again, that's the Tigris River. Again, dealing a travel log about Iraq. So these are 3 books that came out in the last year, and I had a take on them. And then again, it's what I would mention in the last book, that how much, for all the Western involvement in Iraq and the amount of destruction that was wrought on that country by Western, how much destruction was wrought by Western countries into that specific country in Iraq? How much do the average person know about Iraq, about the history of Iraq, about I mean, these go back. These are newer books that talk about ancient Mesopotamia. But then, even when I mentioned something about, let's talk about 20th century Iraqi history. Iraqi history wasn't, oh, the British invented Iraq and then Saddam Hussein came and then we removed Saddam Hussein. It's much more complex than that. And we can see it. We saw it. There's books, Fiasco, and there was the other book, I should have brought it as well, about just the incompetence or it's not incompetence, it was the ignorance of the US military in Iraq. I'm not saying that the US military is very strong. I'm not saying that they're weak. They're a very strong fighting force. But when it came to nation building and winning the peace, they were completely out of depth. And I don't think it was necessarily that the American military or the American military planning was really poor. They were just really ignorant about Iraq, as most people were. Nobody reads. I don't think anybody could name a single face in this cover. So again, that was my hot take. I don't know why I'm getting angry, but it's just I feel like these were books from the first year. I wanted to make that point. I don't know why. Question number 11. What do you look for in writing? What makes a book stand out to you? Is it prose style, theme, voice, structure, or something else? I like prose style. I think prose style is important. Again, prose style becomes really important for books in my niche genre, which is history, because if it's not a good prose, then it becomes very arcane facts and very academic blocks of text in history, and then it becomes really boring, and that's what repels a lot of people from reading history. But if it's good prose, good, well-written prose in history, then it becomes exciting. It becomes like an action adventure novel if history is written well. So prose style for me is what really stands out. Another one, I should have brought it. I have a copy. I don't know if I can probably get it without getting out of camera, but let's just say it's the Evelyn Waug's Brideshead Revisited. That's a good prose. He's a prose master. Excellent. One of my favorite works of fiction that I've read recently. Again, very good prose. So I'm a sucker for prose style. Question 12. How do you decide what to read next? Do you plan ahead, mood read, or follow external factors? Hype, recommendations, ARCs, like advanced reading copies. Before BookTube, I used to be just a random mood reader. Whatever is next on the pile, I just pick it up and read it. I was a man without a plan, just reading. Once I started reading or watching BookTube and seeing that there were BookTube events, I started to follow my favorite BookTubers and tried to kind of put a bit of structure in my reading. Now that I'm a BookTuber myself, I'm also realizing that if you want to make content, you need ideas for content. Probably the best thing to do is to follow the reading prompts and the reading the monthly reading subject matters that are on BookTube. So this month it's Garb August, and there's also Women in Translation. Last month was Jane Austen July. In September, there's going to be a lot of Shakespeare. There's going to be also short story September. Following those, especially as a booktuber, is important because you're also kind of in the there's a sort of community, and you want to be abreast of what's happening in the community, if we can put it that way. So I used to be a very random reader. Now I'm much more structured because of watching BookTube, and now also because of making BookTube videos. So, question 13: where did you get inspiration for your BookTube content? What sparks your video ideas? Other creators, trends, personal reading experiences? A bit of everything. It's a good question because I'm always thinking of interesting content ideas. tags are a very good one because that gives you right away, it gives you questions and you can just answer. That's for a newbie, that's really good because it gets you just thinking and making videos. A lot of people like tags and it comes in the middle of the week. So if you're out of ideas, a tag is always helpful. But I also get inspiration from other booktubers. They'll tell me like, "Oh, what did you think of this book?" or can you recommend?" Or I'll get in my comments. A lot of commenters tell me like, "What did you think of this book?" And oh, by the way, this author I've read. You know, you start talking. This booktube thing is like a community. Whether you're making videos or you're just in the comments, it's like a dialogue, and you're getting ideas, and then you go book shopping, and you're like, "Hey, wait a second. So and so from that channel was mentioning this. Oh, I should check it out. I should grab this, or I really want to get into this." So it's the inspiration comes from everywhere, and then hopefully the ideal is that you can get reading events plus your personal interests fused, and hopefully you'll have good videos. So that's the answer for that for me. Question number 14. If you could make any book go viral right now, what would it be? A book you think deserves more attention and why? Again, I'm going to go back to the Iraq theme. This is a good example of another book that I think should go viral. That I mean, the subject matter, if anybody knows about this, I'll be surprised. Let's put it that way. But it shouldn't be that way because of the history of mostly America, but also Britain and the West and Iraq. So for the book that I think should go viral but isn't, is Ian Rutledge's Enemies on the Euphrates. The subtitle is The British Occupation of Iraq and the Great Arab Revolt, 1914 to 1921. Now, the Great Arab Revolt, the occupation, the British occupation of Iraq, let's just be very careful there. The British occupation of Iraq and the Great Arab Revolt. The Great Arab Revolt isn't the Arab Revolt of Lawrence of Arabia and in the Hijaz and Mecca with the Sharif of Mecca, and probably everybody's seen the T.E. Lawrence movie, Lawrence of Arabia movie. That's not what this is referring to. This is 1914 to 1921 in Iraq. So the fancy yuppie Hollywood fairy tale stuff was the Hollywood fairy tale stuff that happened and that was made very romantic by Hollywood. But the Great Arab Revolt and the British occupation of Iraq was a nasty, brutish occupation that was very bloody indeed, and which had a lot of casualties, and was very similar to the American occupation of Iraq in 2003. So if this was in the early 20th century, the American occupation was in the early 21st century. There was a lot of parallels. That's a bit worn out, but this is that story. Now, how many, you can see the British troops in the dusty, hot, sandy, muddy Iraqi plain. How many people know of the Great Arab Revolt, the Iraqi revolt against British occupation in 1920 and 1921? And if you're a booktuber or you read, you like to read, you're not supposed to know that. The man on the street, woman on the street, isn't supposed to know that. I'm saying how many policymakers who got involved in the Iraq regime change or was in charge of the reconstruction of Iraq. How many of them knew about the Great Arab Revolt or the Great Iraqi Revolt of 1920, 1921? Did anybody know about it? Did anybody in the chain of command? Was this taught to soldiers? Did any policymakers sitting in Washington or in London or in European capitals know about the Great Iraqi Revolt of 1920, 21? Anyway, this is a fascinating book. I don't expect anybody to be interested in this unless you really like the subject. But Iraqi history is very complex. I don't recommend it for a beginner. It's a very complex country. You have Sunni and Shia, you have Arab and Kurd, you have rich and poor, you have rural and urban, and it's a very complex country to understand. So I don't recommend it for beginners, and I'm not saying you have to read this now, but what I'm trying to say is that I had expected that when Western armies went into Iraq that they would know something about Iraq, that it wasn't just, like I said, independence and then Saddam Hussein and then we removed, Saddam is gone, It's not that simple. Iraq is an extremely ancient, extremely complex society. And again, there should be more specialized study considering how much America specifically, but the West generally has been involved in Iraq. So again, I'll end it there. My rant, I'll end it there because again, this video, I wanted to make this quick, and again, as usual, all my videos, they keep rambling on. Where are we? Question 14. Question 15. Who are some booktubers with reading tastes similar to yours? There's a whole bunch of booktubers who are history oriented or prefer history. I wish I could list them, but if I started listing names, I'm scared I'll leave somebody out. So I don't want to do that, but you'll find them if you're like me and you like history and you like nonfiction, you'll find them. We're not the biggest group in the world. We're actually quite, you can count us on our fingers, I think, people who exclusively deal with nonfiction and history. But then again, to just exclusively focus on that is also very rare. Most of the history or nonfiction type of booktubers always are talking about fiction as well. And I'm trying to do fiction, talk about fiction more as well. But then the booktubers also with similar tastes to mine, and some of them are surprising. Angelina had mentioned that no two booktubers are alike, and that's true. But you know, Angelina is mostly a science fiction reader. I'm mostly a history reader, but we're finding similarities. The same is true with JJ, who I think just did this tag as well. JJ, the blacksmith bookworm. I thought she was a fantasy sort of contemporary fiction reader, but then I just watching her videos, she's a very robust or a very prolific history reader. She also likes history, and she's always mentioning history books, and so again, it's even in the more obscure places where you don't expect it, you find the booktubers who have similar tastes. At the end of the day, we're all readers. We're all we're all in this together. I mean, what I'm trying to say is we're all we have this similar passion. We might have different genres or niches, but at the end of the day, somebody who doesn't like the kind of books I read might try it and from my channel get recommendations and read it. And I'm certainly getting ideas from more fiction or from booktubers who have interests so different than mine. I'm trying to keep an open mind. I'm trying to expand my reading and try to read more fiction, maybe get into science fiction, more into fantasy. And that's when other booktubers, even if they're not with similar reading tastes, you'll be surprised how much crossover there really is. And then lastly, tag others. I don't have anybody specific. If you're watching this and you haven't done this tag and you want to do this tag, the questions will be down. I'll link Angelina's video as well. You should check that one out. And yeah, I'll wrap this one up. BookTube, thank you so much. Salute.